lesson, if you want to take it with you. All right, haven't tested you in a while. For those of you who read the e-blast, what's the title of today's lesson? Very good. Yes, open heart, open mind. Thank you, Kat. I appreciate it. So in our Science of Mind philosophy, of course, we talk a lot about the mind and our beliefs. And of course, we have the common motto of change your thinking, change your life. What happened to your heart in that motto? Now, I was told by someone, but it's third hand, that our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, said later in life he would have spent more time talking also about the heart. And many of you, if you're not tired of this metaphor by now, I always like to use the metaphor of the steering wheel and the gas pedal. And the steering wheel is your mind directing you, and your heart is the gas pedal with the power of feeling and emotion and belief. What happens when you just have your head into something? It's like the little kid with the steering wheel thinking he's going somewhere, right? What happens when you have the gas pedal and no steering wheel? Wah! Watch out. Life might get a little chaotic, perhaps. In other words, it takes both heart and mind. It takes both the brakes, the gas pedal, the steering wheel. And when you think about even being in a car and going around a sharp corner, can you go 90 miles an hour to make a left-hand turn 90 degrees? No. So in other words, we learn experientially. I don't think any of you would give a 16-year-old the car keys without having had some kind of experience, even though you can give them a lesson on how to drive a car. But based on your experience, you begin to use both the gas pedal and the steering wheel to move through life. And so it is with an open heart and an open mind. In today's societal environment, there's a lot of thoughtful things. Thoughtful, F-U-L, and thoughtful, F-U-double-L. And we tend to, in these days, be full of a lot of thoughts. What really I despise, and I'm trying to still figure out what my strategy is when I'm reading to sort of catch up on the news or what's going on. It really hurts me to watch people call each other names and bully each other. And what's really missing in all of that is, oh, let's debate, I see it differently, this is how I see it, but the heart of love is missing in that. Unfortunately, I have a family member going through divorce, and so the family feels like they have to pick sides. And so, even as a society, have we matured in the way that it's love and, not love or? And we can be thinking, Carolyn Myss, who many of you know, M-Y-S-S, is a doctor and a New Thought philosopher. And she says, we are at the beyond reason point of our evolution, meaning that the type and scope of the problems we all have today and what we're confronting cannot be resolved by a mere gathering of reasonable people around the table. Because we can argue and debate. Where's the heart in that? Carolyn Myss goes on to say that we can't reason with Mother Nature. We can't sanction our way through the global warming or declare war on the melting ice caps in the Arctic in order to make them cease their melting. We are at a crossroads in humanity. Love Mother Earth. So I titled this lesson specifically with open heart first, because our loving intention must come first from then us creating conversation and using words that represent how we want to see that come back to us based on the principles of the universe. What we put out comes back to us multiplied. And is love really a byproduct of thought? Or is love really a byproduct of the heart? So my magical thinking is heavy speaking from the heart of love publicly. Of course, I do that here. And then I think about that, whether it's, social media or any of the connections that we have with our community. We're in the tourist shelter, we're doing Adopt a Highway. There are other aspects that we are donating to this community. And how do we continue to make ourselves a part of speaking the heart of love publicly? We actually reiterated a affirmation earlier today, but also in your e-blast, also by Amy Roberts. You keep getting highlighted today. What can I say? Love is the universal language that connects all hearts. Love is the universal language that connects all hearts. So all the lessons, of course, for this year on our YouTube has been just love. And I've been reading multiple books. This one is the Krishnamurti Reader. And Krishnamurti is a philosopher who died in 1986, speaker, writer. And he was originally of the Theosophical tradition, but eventually disconnected from them. But he was also a friend of David Bohm. Many of us during the pandemic saw the movie Infinite Potential, where David Bohm was a physicist who believed in this unified field called love. That the scientists will never call love when they discovered this is the power. Yes, the power is love. And David Bohm was basically outcast, but he continued as a physicist and eventually worked his way back in. And of course now with quantum theory, understanding that if you love right here, it is omnipresent. What is here is present everywhere. And so Krishnamurti and David Bohm continued their conversations together. And the conversations were very much wrapped around psychological revolution. The nature of mind, meditation and mindfulness, holistic inquiry, human relationships, and bringing about radical change in society, which comes first from within. Does that sound familiar to Science of Mind? So with Krishnamurti, his premise is the art of living is how you are living this moment. And now this moment. And now this moment. So just so you remember that, repeat after me. The art of living, is how I am living in this moment. So are you arguing with yourself? Are you being uncompassionate with yourself? How are you in this moment? Oozing love? Or are we thoughtful? Because what we have tend to have done with ourselves is filled our entire lives with lots of thoughts that usually deal with the past or the future and are distracting ourselves from what is in this very moment. Hence why I did mindfulness. The opportunity to, throughout the day, just bring yourself back to the center of where am I and how am I now? How am I living right now? We know what happened is with each now, you build. You build your art of living. So if we're living distracted in our mind and not living per se from connecting with our heart in each moment, we're not accustomed to loving what is. Loving society as it is, loving people as they are, which of course brings us to our next book. Many of you have read this book. It was so appropriate for our Just Love theme, loving what is. Because we tend to be wanting something different than what we have in the moment and accepting what we have in this moment. And if we were allow ourselves to live in each moment, would we live with a freer mind? A freer mind. Would we understand that there is a vast space and silence where the love goes deep, beyond words? Would we recognize our beingness more often rather than being lost in our full of thought? And would we therefore be living more from our heart? All right, where did I put? I'll be showing from the iPad, so if you want to turn that on. We're trying new technology, a girl and her tools. Okay, I think you should see my screen. We're working on that connection. Maybe I have to. Oh, up there because we were off for so long? Okay, thank you. Okay, who has, can we turn the lights down on the stage a little bit just so people can see the screen better? And I need to stay closer to the microphone so everybody can hear me. Has anybody heard of master class? Okay, a few of you. Master classes. Oh, I'm not ready for you to speak yet. Master class is like a YouTube channel, but it is made up of classes done by celebrities and people you've seen and heard, activists, singers, songwriters, and very high quality video production with snippets of videos. And the center, thanks to Amy Roberts, we plan to use these master classes for conscious conversation. Conversation about what? Well, I'm going to show you a little bit of masterclass for, I never say his name right, Pharrell Williams? Pharrell Williams. Pharrell. I just always look at the word Pharrell Williams. And the name of that class is The Path of Empathy. I'm also watching Malala talk about change and activism. I know that Amy's currently watching Gloria Steinem on redefining feminism. There is a lot of really good, thoughtful FUL. And the classes are made up of several videos, and at the end of each video could be a lesson, a question to contemplate, and will be a part of our conscious conversations. So, you're not seeing my screen, so we'll see how this goes here. If I have to share a little bit more, I will. It says, Evolution of Love by Cornel West.
I think there is a need for empathy warriors in every context, every site, and every sphere in our society who can look unflinchingly at the corruption and still try to manifest an empathy, a care, a concern, a compassion, or even a love of fellow citizens who are weak and vulnerable. For me, any serious talk about empathy in the 21st century has to begin with the shift from religious discourses about love in its various forms and secular discourses about sympathy. And the transfiguration of sympathy into empathy is a fascinating story. Some people use the two words in a synonymous way. The overlap is real, but they're not identical. Sympathy was understood going back to the 18th century philosophers. David Hume talks about it in terms of sympathy and benevolence. It was their attempt to get beyond being spectators and simply looking at somebody else's pain and suffering and misery, you see. But you first had to have some identification with that pain. So the question became, is it possible for persons to share the same feelings of other persons? Is it possible for persons to share the same experiences of other persons? And if so, what kind of process, what various stages do you have to undergo to result in a genuine sharing that produces a care and a concern for the people who are suffering? And then empathy is a word that doesn't emerge until the early part of the 20th century as sympathy is transformed into empathy within the discourse. Now, when the philosophers hit the scene and said, well, empathy is actually deeper than sympathy because the role of imagination plays a more crucial role. It's not just a matter of perception, looking, seeing something. See, it's one thing to encounter somebody who's undergoing grief and then you all of a sudden feel deep sadness and a grief for their grief. But when it's at a distance and you're thinking, there's no way I can feel what they feel, but I can imagine what it's like to be in their shoes if I hear enough of their story, if I hear enough of...
So that video in particular goes on for another, I'll say, 9 minutes, and Cornel has some other snippets that he continues to talk about empathy. Now, it's sort of interesting. He gets into, yes, it's true, empathy as a word is only about 100 years old. That's sort of fascinating, isn't it? And he goes on talking about, lots of religion talks about love. But the application of love is very narrow. I love you. I will love you if you believe like I believe. And he continues to talk about, and I don't like the word warriors because it makes it sound like you got to fight, but empathy warriors in his mind is, how are we going to apply universal love to all? And he literally says, till it burst out, letting love flow out to everyone and everywhere. It all has to begin with a vision, and of course, it has to also begin in our hearts. He also has another session that he calls it the love ethic. And he basically says, and this blows my mind, he actually ties democracy to empathy, to changing public policy when people can feel empathy and are devoted to abolishing people living in poverty. And of course, his words as a philosopher are just very powerful. He also goes through the history of the Poor People's Campaign. Have any of you heard of that before? Yeah, it's actually a very old campaign, not meant to be of a specific religion and not meant to be of a specific political orientation, but rather using the love ethic to connect us all as a way of life. So I could go on and on, right? These videos, the idea that Amy has envisioned is that we want people to be a part of the masterclass, and then to take these masterclasses and have an opportunity to see these videos together and to have a deeper conversation, and in this case, about the path of empathy. So talk to Amy. Amy's got a Facebook group and she's got access to masterclass. So if you're interested, please talk with her. And I look forward to doing that more. Essentially coming back to open heart and open mind, again, based on watching those videos and again, listening to people speak on these particular topics is a way to connect, a way for us to build our passion and connection together and then see how we want to express that in the world. So ultimately, our heart must be open to just love. Our minds can be very critical, judgmental, and labeling of one another right out of the gate. Isn't that what you see on the news? A lot of labeling of people, right? So today, we're called to lead. First, to lead ourselves into the present moment, into an open heart, and then an open mind. And then to connect with others in that domain. So I will finish by saying a quote from Oprah Winfrey. Let every step you take move in the direction of love. Namaste.